So I just wanted to go over some details about this Mandrill boss hallway crash because it's pretty interesting and actually kind of surprising. So what we need to look at first is this block of memory that's currently all zeros because we're at the start of the stage, but what this is it contains miscellaneous objects in the game, like dust sprites, explosions, that sort of thing. So if I dash here, you see that a part of this block gets filled up with memory. And if you look at the column under this 81 here, this contains flags for when the objects are loaded. So when I'm dashing, you can see that they're all non-zero, or most of them are non-zero. And when the dust sprites disappear, then they go back to 0, so you can tell that that's for when they're loaded. The next thing we need to look at here is this second entry in the block. So if we go to the first value here, go down 1 row, and then 2 to the right, so offset 12 in hex. This value, for the majority of objects in the game, is an index into a jump table. So what that means is there's a block of memory in the ROM that contains memory addresses, and then when you go to that memory address, it contains code that the game runs, and this value decides where in that table you read the address from for the game to execute. So what I'm going to do is set a read breakpoint on this value, so when code reads this value, the game is going to pause. And I just dash there to trigger it. And you can see it paused in the debugger. So it paused on this instruction here that's loading the value from this 12 offset. So if I step forward, it loads that value into the X register, which is right here, and that value is currently 0, so you can just ignore that branch there. And here's the jump in question for the jump table. The base address for this jump table is 8280EA, you can see it right here. So this here is the jump table, and because our index is 0, it's going to load the memory address 810B. It's going to be backwards in the debugger, but if we step forward and let that jump happen, you can see that the program counter got updated to 810B, and I don't know exactly what this code is doing right now. It's not too relevant to what we're looking at, but just wanted to demonstrate how the jump table works. So we're at the end of Mandrill now, and when we're in a section of the stage where the screen is fading in or out like this, one of the objects that's loaded in this block of memory is the controller for this brightness, so I have it highlighted right here in the memory editor. You can look at this counter here, and whenever this hits 0, then the brightness of the screen like fades in or out. One weird thing about this object in particular, though, is if we look at the 12 offset, I think it's this one, yeah, it's this one. Instead of using this value as a jump table index, it's using it as a flag. For whether the screen is faded in or out. So when it writes 1 here, this, for any other object, this is going to be an even number because those memory addresses are 2 bytes long. So it should never be 1, pretty much, because that's not going to be a valid entry in the jump table. And the effect that that has is, I'm just going to load my next state here. So I'm in the boss hallway, and the third entry in this table is leftover data from that fading controller. And because I entered the door when the screen was fading, this value is still 1 instead of 0, so if I were to dash, the next thing that gets loaded into this slot is going to be the little spark that gets left behind X. So this first one, I'm not really sure what this is, to be honest, but this one's going to be a dust sprite, and this one is going to be the spark. One bug with the spark is usually objects will overwrite this value with their own data when they're loaded, but that spark doesn't do that. So if I set a read breakpoint on this value here, when it tries to load the spark into memory, you can see that it's still 1 here. This is data from the fading. So it's gonna load that into the X register, the 1 here. And it's about to jump here again, so I'm just going to show the jump table here. Here it is again. It's going to load address 2081, which is it's 1 byte from this first address and 1 byte from the second address. So this is not going to contain, or at least in this instance, it doesn't. It doesn't contain valid code. So let's just jump here. And yeah, this is clearly not right. This is just garbage data being interpreted as code. So it's gonna do another jump, and it's just gonna, like, this is not real code. It's just gonna keep executing this as code all the way down and just do the same thing over and over again. I think this is a store into memory. Doesn't do anything important anyway, so it doesn't matter too much, but we're just gonna keep stepping through. And here's some other garbage data that's slightly different than it was before. And it's just gonna execute all this nonsense that doesn't actually do anything. And when the game really crashes is when it reaches the bottom here and hits this break instruction. So that's gonna trigger the interrupt request. And it does another jump, and this is like the final resting place of the execution. This instruction here, it just branches to itself in an infinite loop, so it's stuck here forever. And whenever the game crashes, this is what's happening. It jumps to this instruction, and yeah, rest in peace. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I was pretty surprised that there was a way to get the game into this sort of state where it's executing junk as code. I didn't think there was really a way of doing that. At least not in a reproducible way like this one. I had my hopes up a little bit with this, because this is usually how more interesting exploits are found, like Ace, but unfortunately, the code that gets run is not very interesting at all. There isn't really a way to change that index either, like it's either 0 or 1. There could be more potential for other stuff if there was a way to populate that with something other than 1, but I don't really think there is. I replayed the 100% tasks while running a script that prints those values on screen to see if there's anything else with a similar property to the fading controller, but I don't think there is, at least not from what I can see, so... and they also patched this bug in X2 and X3, so even if there was a way to get that value to contain something other than a valid jump table index, they fixed like that spark so that it doesn't read leftover data. It overwrites that value. So yeah, hopefully that explanation was decent, but I just wanted to share my findings here.